We'll talk security later on. Our attention on the show today is turned to the petroleum sector. Low crude oil production in the first quarter of the year has been attributed to issues of Trans-Niger pipeline and maintenance activities by some oil companies. And that message is coming from the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources Oil, Heineken Lokpobiri. The minister in a statement said the issues have been resolved and that the country would soon get to churning out 1.7 million barrels of oil daily. It said that the federal government is currently working on policies geared towards maximizing the use of all available wells across the country in a bid to generate revenue to meet budget expenses and foreign exchange so as to stabilize the FX market. To examine the activities of the Petroleum Ministry, I'm joined by the Minister of State for Petroleum Resources Oil, Heineken Lokpobiri, is right here with me in the studio. Distinguished Senator, do they still call you that?
I'm still a senator. Once a senator, always a senator.
Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you. Thank you.
So let's get to it. When you resumed last year, we saw you go around the refineries across the country. And I think it was in Port Harcourt that you mentioned that the PH refinery will come on board by the end of last year, Warri in the first quarter of this year, and Kaduna will come on stream towards the end of this year. That promise for both PH and Warri wasn't fulfilled within the timeline you predicted. What happened?
Well, thank you very much, for the opportunity, to appear before your program. Let's start by saying that the Port Harcourt Refinery, as we promised, was mechanically completed. Phase 1, or they call it Area 5, was mechanically completed. But it's just like, you see the cockpit of a plane. If you see the cockpit of a plane, there are so many buttons. All those buttons are relevant to the efficient takeoff and landing of any plane. And so what we did was ensure that the mechanical aspect of the Area 5 was completed, the flames came on, and they're still on. If you can remember, Dangote Refinery was commissioned sometime last year by President Buhari before he left office. It's just about a few weeks ago that it started turning out, products, for the market. And so a refinery is not just any, small, platform where, or any small, facility where you can just, start producing, products. But the assurance I want to give to Nigerians that we are on course, have been briefed, by NNPC, that is the owner of the refineries, that this quarter, certainly, Port Harcourt Refinery will come on stream, Warri Refinery will come on stream, and Kaduna will still come on stream by the end of the year.
Talking about NNPC, the GMD did say it will resume operation in April. What really does that mean? Did it begin commercial operation at the time?
Well, I think that question should be for the GMD and NNPC.
But you're closer to him than I am.
It's better for the person who made that commitment to answer the question, but I can assure you that...
So Warri 2 was promised for the first quarter of this year. Is there a new time
No. Warri 2 is almost mechanically completed.
But now we know that mechanical completion is not real commercial completion. I mean, for it to
we didn't say commercial completion. We said...
No, what you said really, I mean, the conversation ongoing was that the refinery was expected to resume refining after a turnaround maintenance in December 2023, and we're in April right now.
For your information, Port Harcourt Refinery had already received, crude, ready to go, but there are processes. NMDPRA has to certify, every button has to be ensured, we have to ensure that every aspect of, the refinery, as far as that Area 1 is concerned, or Area 5 is concerned, is, certified okay before you can take off.
So where would they start refining oil?
This quarter.
This quarter?
This quarter. My briefing is that I'm not there day to day. As minister, what I do is to provide supervision. And so I've been briefed, by the NNPC team that this quarter, it could be tomorrow, it could be next week, but they said this quarter is safer, to say this quarter instead of mentioning next 1 month, next 1 week, so that we don't keep going back and forth.
So that I don't ask you that question again, that you did not meet, you did not fulfill your promise. Let's talk about the average crude oil production, which has now dropped by 7% in March. Marking the second consecutive month-on-month decline. What that means is that as we speak, Libya is now Africa's biggest oil producer, not Nigeria. Does that bother you?
Well, it will bother me as, minister in charge of petroleum, oil. And the assurance I can give to Nigerians is that we shouldn't bother too much, about the fact that Libya was just maybe about a few thousands of barrels more than, Nigeria. But like I said in that statement, issued by my SM media, is that the reason why that happened was because the Trans-Niger, pipeline had some issues, and so it has to be shut down for fixing. Since, that happened, those areas that were affected have been fixed, and it is ready, to be reopened. Also, Shell also had to do some routine maintenance about some of the facilities. That also, was contributing to the reason why, we had that problem. And then some other companies also had to shut down for routine maintenance, because if you don't maintain them, we'll have these issues,
Issues
but
with...
I can assure you that Nigeria will go back, to the 1.45 or thereabout that we were doing as at January. As at December, January, so when I became minister, we were doing about, less than 1 million barrels. We started, on a sustainable basis, started increasing production until we got to about 1.45. But this figure is exclusive of condensate. And if we had the condensate, we're still doing within the 1.7 million barrels. My target, in the short term, is to ensure that we, do production beyond the upper quarter. And we have capacity to do so. Our inability not to do 1.7 or more is not us. It has nothing to do with capacity. It has, something to do with our, infrastructure. Our pipelines, some of them have already outlived their age. Some of them are 40, 50 years.
Exactly the point I was going to make, that I'm quite optimistic about your assurance of getting back to 1.7 million barrels per day. But the big question is, do we have the accurate diagnosis? You talked about issues with Trans-Niger pipeline and maintenance activities, which according to that statement have now been resolved. But some have attributed the low production trend that we have observed in recent years to more issues than that: massive crude oil theft, aging oil fields, poor crude oil terminal maintenance and shutdowns, and even reduced investments in upstream oil and gas sector. You don't think these are still relevant challenges even today?
Yeah, those challenges were there before we were doing 1.4, as of January. And so those can be the reasons why we're doing 1.25. The reason why we're doing 1.25 is what I've just told you. This pipeline had some infractions. They had to be shut down for fixing. Routine maintenance by some oil companies, had to take place, because if that doesn't happen, it will create more problems in the short term. But these problems will not impede our capacity to be able to do 1.5 as given to us by OPEC, and if we add condensate, we'll be doing 1.7 and more. But I've had the privilege of going around the world, and all my counterparts all over the world, tell me that every available well that is drilled already, is being explored. Where in Nigeria, you have thousands of oil wells. They have been drilled, they are capped, and just abandoned there. So part of our policy direction, in the short term, is to see how we can, give those oil wells to Nigerians who are competent both financially and technically, so that we'll be able to ramp up production in the short term. It will shock you that, take for instance, in OML 11, we have over 150 wells. Out of the 150 wells, only about 5 or 6 of them are actively being explored. The rest are just idle. Just lying, idle. And there are thousands of wells like that. So what I've engaged, the industry stakeholders, NMPC, the IOCC, the local, the PIA says that any oil well that is not being explored, satisfactorily in the next 7 years, can be farmed out and be given to those who technically, financially competent to be able to put them into active productive use. If we do that, my target is to ensure that we do some 2.53 million barrels in the short term. And that is achievable.
It sounds good, but I like the idea of short term, because we've seen some improvement in FX liquidity recently. And some have said to sustain this improvement in the coming months, it will depend to an extent on increased crude oil production.
Yes.
Is that a burden you agree to carry?
Yes. You know, you agree with me that, look, the quickest way to our economic, recovery, the quickest way to salvaging our economy as a country is the oil and gas sector. That is the quickest way. The lowest hanging fruits are in the oil and gas sector. Oil is, what they call the black gold. Every country that has oil resources prioritizes investment in oil and gas. What happened in this country was that in the last 10 years, there was capital flight, there was limited investment, there was practically no investment in oil and gas sector. The reason was that the PIA took longer than ever, longer than expected to be passed. And when the PIA was passed, the previous government wasn't really paying attention to seeing how they can create a competitive global economy, a global competitive, global, environment that will make these companies come back to, start investing. But since this government came, under the clear directives of President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, we have rekindled the confidence of the IOCs, we have rekindled the confidence of potential investors in the sector, and they are coming back. And I can assure you that in the short term, we'll be able to change the narrative.
So,
and then bring enough liquidity
yes,
from the oil and gas sector that will enable us stabilize our forex market, and also enable us, raise the necessary funding to finance other strategic sectors of our economy.
And another huge concern here is that we're hearing that full subsidy has crept into this administration. And according to the former Kaduna state governor, he did mention recently that we're not even paying more now than before. We're going to talk about that in a short while. Let's take a short break, and I'll be back with the Minister of State for Petroleum Industry. Stay with us, everyone.